Hello everyone, this is Teacher Chris of Science Fun, where learning science is easy and fun. Welcome to Amazing Science! Here, we will talk about science concepts in grade 7, including the topics on chemistry, physics, biology, and earth science. Dito, bida ang agham.
1, 2, 3, come on!
Quarter 2, Week 6. Milk. Describe the different ecological relationships found in an ecosystem. Before we proceed with our topic for today, let us first have a recap regarding our previous lesson by playing this game called Ecosystem Component Game, wherein you're going to identify the photos that I'm going to show to you as biotic or abiotic component of the ecosystem. If you are ready, let us begin. Number 1. Okay, so the answer is biotic component of an ecosystem. Number 2. The answer is abiotic, so that is the sunlight, abiotic component of an ecosystem. Number 3. The answer is biotic. Number 4. The answer for number 4 is abiotic component of the ecosystem. And number 5. The answer is biotic component of an ecosystem. So I think you are ready for our topic for today, but before that, before we proceed, I want you to watch first this video clip. So in watching this video clip, I want you to jot down notes, the important concepts that you can get from these videos, and later on I'm going to ask about this video clip. So if you are ready, let us watch this simple video clip.
I really did not like sandboxes as a kid. It's not that I have a problem with sand, or sand on the beach, or sand castles, just sand boxes. See, as a little kid, I'd play with something, then I'd kind of forget about it, and then rediscover it, and it'd be all new again. This is what happened with my sandbox. Except, when I rediscovered it, the sand had all these tiny holes in it. My dad was with me and exclaimed, "Why, look at that, your sandbox is full of antlions." Perhaps my dad should not have assumed that I knew what antlions were. I eventually figured out what they were later on, and it makes sense now because my father really loves insects. Antlions are insects. In their adult form, they sort of look, in my personal opinion, like a less cool version of a dragonfly. They are not a dragonfly. But in their larva stage, they look, well, not like many things I can compare it to. They have these mandibles and they make these sandpit traps. And then they wait with their mandibles just showing above the surface. When an ant or other small insect walks over their sandpit, they drag it in. They pull the ant underground, biting it and injecting it with enzymes to digest it in order to consume the ant's juices. I also have learned by watching them that they toss sand at their ant victim too if they need help subduing it before they drag them under. Thankfully, antlions are small. In fact, doodlebug is evidently another name for these things. I'm not exactly sure how you go from antlion to doodlebug, but okay. It's all relative. They're bad news for an ant because the antlion is a predator of the ant. The ant is their prey. That's an ecological relationship right there. And that's what we're going to talk about, ecological relationships. Also, just because this antlion is a predator doesn't mean that this is the only role it plays. An antlion can get eaten by a bird. Now the antlion has just become the bird's prey. Competition is also another relationship to consider. Antlions are consumers, which means they have to eat other things. They can't make their own food. They have to compete with other antlions for this food too. This food being their prey, the ants. This example shows competition for a limiting biotic factor. And they're not just competing with other antlions for this biotic factor. They may have to compete with completely different species in the area that are also predators of ants too. For example, jumping spiders like ants. It's not just consumers that compete. Producers, like this plant, make their own food, but that does not mean they don't have to deal with competition. For example, this plant here is competing for this limiting abiotic factor, light. Symbiotic relationships are specific types of relationships where different species live together. Parasitism is an example of a symbiotic relationship where one organism benefits and the other is harmed. An example? Well, I love dogs. Petunia is the cat person. When my family took in our rescue dog, she was 4 months old at the time. We learned from the vet that she would need to be treated for fleas and hookworms. We were able to give her medicine to treat these parasites. A good thing because these parasites can hurt the dog by feeding on their blood. A parasite is an organism that gets its nutrients from another organism and causes harm to its host. They can live inside or on their host. Mutualism is an example of a symbiotic relationship where both organisms involved benefit. You really need to look up a video about acacia ants and acacia trees because this is a fascinating example. See, some species of acacia trees form these hollow thorns which provide housing to acacia ants. Some species even provide a nectar for food for these ants. So, what does this tree get in return? Protection. I'd hate to be a type of consumer that eats acacia trees because if it has acacia ants, the ants will come out of the thorns and attack the consumer. They'll even destroy plants that try to grow close to the acacia tree so the ants can eliminate the tree's competition. Nice mutual relationship between the acacia tree and the acacia ant. The last symbiotic relationship we'll mention is Commensalism. This one is interesting because in this relationship, one organism benefits and the other is neither helped nor harmed. It has a neutral effect. Some species of barnacles and whales are a great example. Many barnacle species can attach themselves to moving things, like a boat or a whale. On a free whale ride, the barnacles get a lot of access to food since they are filter feeders and the whale may travel to nutrient-rich waters. In this particular example, the barnacles benefit, but neither help nor harm the whale, so this would be commensalism. But I do like to remind my students that sometimes there's more to the story with a relationship labeled as commensalism, and sometimes what we thought was a completely neutral effect may not always be in every case. So why do all these relationships matter anyway? Well, one reason is that these interactions can make significant impacts on populations of different species living together. That means if the population of a certain species is threatened by human activity, for example, it can affect more than just that one species. Scientists continue to learn about new ecological relationships all the time. Well, that's it for the Amoeba Sisters, and we remind you to stay curious.
Okay, so what was all about the video clip? So the video clip is all about ecological relationships. So when we say ecological relationships, it describes the interaction between and among organisms within their environment. Every living thing and non-living thing around us are interconnected in a place we call ecosystem. There are many ways living things interact with the non-living things, like how the parent to a son or daughter, the friends and enemies to one another. From the last module, where you have known what are living things, the biotic, and the non-living things, which are the abiotic, it is also important to know how this component of the ecosystem live together or fight one another in order to survive in a place they live in. So that's what you are going to learn here about ecological relationships. So basically, there are three main types of ecological relationships, namely predation, competition, and symbiosis. Symbiosis is subdivided also into three types. We have commensalism, mutualism, and we have parasitism. So let us first discuss what is predation. So when we say predation, it is an interaction where one organism, the predator, kills and eats another organism, its prey. So in this example, in the photo, the bear is the predator. It eats the fish for its food. The fish is the prey.
Another example of predation is when a frog eats an insect. So the frog is the predator and the insect is the prey. Predation also occurs when human being kills other organism in order to survive. In this photo, humans are the predator and the cow is the prey.
So let us now have competition. Competition is the interaction between organisms or species in which both the organisms or species are harmed. They are competing with a limited supply of at least one resource, such as food, water, and territory. For example, in the photo above, the plants consume nitrogen, water, and other nutrients by absorbing it into their roots, making it available to nearby plants. So that is competition.
So let's have another example of competition. So in this photo, the chickens are competing with one another for food in order to survive. Humans also compete with one another in the different sports just like basketball, badminton, soccer, and the like. Or in a singing competition just like Tawag ng Tanghalan and The Voice.
Let's have symbiosis. So when we say symbiosis is an interaction between two organisms from different species living together, usually with benefits to one or both of the individuals involved. So we have three types of this. Let us first have commensalism. So commensalism is a relationship between organisms where one benefits and the other is neither help nor harm. So in other words, the organism benefits by receiving transportation, housing, or nutrition. So in this example, the photo below, the barnacles receive transportation from the whale here in its fin. The whale is neither helped nor harmed by the barnacles.
Let's have another example. In this video, the remora is attached to the dugong to get a free meal and a free ride to save energy. While the dugong is unaffected, so the host is the dugong and the remora is called commensal. Another example of commensalism is the relationship between the cattle and the cattle egret. The cattle egrets eat the insects stirred up by the cattle when they are grazing. While the cattle egret eat the insects, the cattle remains unharmed. So the cattle egret is called the commensals, while the cattle is called the host.
The second type of symbiosis is mutualism. So mutualism is a symbiotic relationship between two species, where both of the organisms is being benefited and neither is harmed. So the relationship can be long or short term. For example, in the photo above, The flower benefits by being pollinated by the traveling butterfly. The butterfly benefits from the nectar that it extracts from the flower as its food.
Let's have another example of mutualism. In this video, the bee benefits from the nectar that it extracts from the flower, while the flower benefits by being pollinated by the bee as its pollen grains attach to the bee as it lands to the flower. Mutualism also occurs in clownfish and sea anemone. The clownfish are frequently found in the tentacles of the sea anemones. Sea anemones capture their prey by paralysis with their tentacles. However, the clownfish produces a mucus that prevents the tentacles from harming it. So the sea anemone protects the clownfish, while the clownfish drives off the invaders. So both of them are benefited with each other.
And lastly, the third type of symbiosis is parasitism. So when we say parasitism, it is a symbiotic relationship where one member, the parasite, gains benefits and the host is being harmed. Okay, for example, in this photo, the tick in the picture above is a parasite. It benefits by extracting blood from its human host. The human is the host and the tick is the parasite. So, the organism that is being benefited is the tick, while the organism that is being harmed is the human. So, the human is served as the host, while the tick serves as the parasite.
In human, the head lice are the obligate ectoparasite. The lice attach to the human hair until they grow and suck the blood in our head for their own nutrients. In this relationship, the host is the human, while the parasites are the lice. Another parasite in the human body is the tapeworm. These are flat segmented worms that live in the intestines. Humans become infected when we eat food that contains tapeworm eggs or contaminated water. The tapeworm gets its nutrients from the food that we eat, so we should maintain proper hygiene to avoid such parasites. In this relationship, the parasite is the tapeworm while the host is the human.
So let us go back to the different types of interaction that we have discussed. The three major types of ecological relationships. These are the predation, competition, symbiosis, and symbiosis is subdivided into three types: commensalism, mutualism, and parasitism. Let us now see how much you have learned from our topic for today by doing this game. The title is Game Ka Na Ba? So kung game ka na, let us start. So there are 5 questions. You're going to choose from letters A to C. You only have 5 seconds to think of your answer. So let's start number 1. In this photo, the cleaner fish receives nourishment by dining off the parasite and remaining food debris in the eel's mouth. Is this an example of A. Parasitism, B. Mutualism, or C. Commensalism? So the answer is letter B. Okay, for number 2. Clownfish are frequently found in the tentacles of sea anemones. Sea anemones capture their prey by paralyzing them with their tentacles. However, the clownfish produces a mucus that prevents the tentacles from harming it. By dwelling amongst the tentacles, the clownfish receives a protective home. This relationship is an example of A. Parasitism, B. Commensalism, or C. Mutualism. Okay, so let us see your answer. Is this commensalism? Correct. The answer is commensalism. For number 3, the birds in the picture are munching on a tiny parasitic insects located on the rhino. The relationship between the birds and the rhino is an example of letter A, parasitism, B, mutualism, or C, commensalism. Okay, so the answer for number 3 is mutualism. Correct, the answer is mutualism. Let us proceed. Number 4. Lampreys are primitive fish with limited digestive system. They attach to and feed on the body fluids of fish with more advanced digestive system, often leading to the death of host fish. This relationship is an example of A, parasitism, B, mutualism, or C, commensalism. Okay, so let us see. Is this parasitism? Correct? Okay, last number 5. Orchids grow on the branches of the high trees. These orchids get more water and sunlight than those on the ground. The tree is unaffected by the orchid's presence. This relationship is an example of parasitism, mutualism, or commensalism. Okay, the answer is commensalism.
Let's proceed to part 2. Identify the ecological relationship in the given pictures. You have 15 seconds to think of your answer. The answer for number 1 is competition. Number 2, parasitism. Number 3, commensalism. 4, predation. And lastly, number 5 is mutualism. That ends our amazing science lesson for today. Don't forget to share this video with your friends and classmates so that we can learn together. See you next time. Bye-bye!